Kabong! Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today. I do truly appreciate it, and I get to talk about a book that I read. It was a long time coming. This was a book that I had on my shelf for a long time, but it's Live Girls, and it's right here. Right here is a beautiful example by Ray Garton, and this is the Centipede Press limited edition version of that book. It's signed and numbered and got all kinds of cool stuff. I'm not here to show you all that, but I do like to show off my junk. It's signed by Ray Garton, Adam Braun, and Ron Lesser, number 94 of 300 copies from Centipede Press. But I bought this book because I got it on a pretty good, what I thought was a very good deal, a steal, a sale of the century. And it sounded good, and a lot of people talked highly of Ray Garton. And that's not the actual copy that I read, but it sat on my shelf for a couple of years at least, maybe more. Sat on the shelf as a book I need to get to, and I finally got to it. But this is the copy that I actually read. See, I've got an aversion. When I read stuff, I always worry that on the fancy limited edition books, I'm going to ruin them. So I typically don't read the limited edition copies themselves. I do sometimes, if it's something I really want to read and that's the only version I got, or it's the only way it's available. I've read quite a few books that way, actually. But I feel much more comfortable, at ease, when I've got a soft cover version that I got more affordably and more economically. But one thing right off the bat, looking at these versions of the book, is there are some really great looking versions of Live Girls. Some really good cover designs, some graphic designs, some artwork and such as that. And so it's catches the eye. It's attractive. You want to see what that's about, what that's all about. What's that all about? But Ray Garton wrote a vampire novel. And he wrote more than one vampire novel. This is the only one I've read. It's the only Ray Garton book that I've read at this time. And I'll let you know if I decide after I talk about this book a little bit if he's an author that I want to pursue more. Ray Garton has passed, but he left behind a lot of work, and a lot of it being well spoken of and popular and such as that. And Live Girls, like I said, is a vampire novel, and it's different than the typical vampire fare. It's not the vampire novel that I'm most used to, but it's very good. It's more raw, more rugged, more brutal and bloody. Things get messed up and people get messed up and stuff's going on. A lot of stuff's going on. But this one is set in the mid to late 80s, I think 87, in Times Square. And I'm not a New York person. I've never been to the city ever in New York. And I definitely wasn't there in the 80s. But Times Square in the 80s apparently was something much different than what we're used to today. It was more of a den of sin and lots of peep shows and prostitutes and drugs and strip clubs and backroom bonanzas and stuff along those lines. And in the description of the book, you get people walking through Times Square and seeing everywhere nude girls, live shows, stuff like that, everywhere. And much different than how it's portrayed today. The way I understand it, the area's much different now. A lot more business-like, a lot more tourist-like, and such as that. But the book spells out this. They're right in the very beginning. This character, Vernon Macy, he's a middle-aged guy, not exactly attractive or even really a true success, but he hears people at work talk about the clubs and the strip clubs and stuff like that at Times Square. and he's not really happy at home, and he wants to find ways to not go home sometimes. So he decides one day, even though it's never something he's never done, to go to Times Square and see what it's all about. And he ends up in this place called Live Girls, just a big neon sign and somebody at the door. And he goes in, and things are changed drastically. Essentially, you go into this room, you put some money in, you go into this room, and you see a beautiful nude woman, and there's a hole, and she does things to you. And we find out later on that those things that this particular woman does to you, named Anya, and others, there's others like her, they turn you, because I don't want to spoil too much. I don't want to give too much away, but they turn you. And so Walter's got a wife, and her wife is upset. His wife is upset because he's not coming home much anymore. And when he does, he's a much different sort of a guy. So she talks to her brother named Walter Benedict, who's actually a reporter. And Walter starts to snoop a little bit. And he finds out where Walter's been going and what's going on. And at the same time, he runs across this fella named Davy Owen, who is, for the most part, our main character. There are very important characters. Walter, Davy, another lady that I'll talk about in a minute named Casey Thorne, who works with Davy. But they work together at this pen publishing, and they're small time, low rent. Davy's got him a girlfriend named Beth. Beth is not very happy with him. She tends to like bad people, drug dealer. Her ex-boyfriend's a drug dealer who beat her up. And Davy's nice to her and good to her, and he's very passive, and he's not aggressive in any way, and she can't handle that. And so she just runs all over him, leaves him to go back to her drug dealing, abusing boyfriend. And Davy is heartbroken, and at the same time, he's expecting to get a promotion. Promotion's available at Penn Publishing, but this jerk named Chad ends up not only getting the promotion because he's doing things for the boss, doing things for Miss Schumann, and Miss Schumann tells Davy, hey, if you come back to my place with me and do some things, I can get you a promotion. So Davy's in a bad spot in his life, in a bad way. He's depressed, and he ends up at Live Girls. He ends up at the show with the hole where you put things and things get done to you. And he is ultimately turned into a vampire, but he's now the property of the lady vampire who has turned him. And this is all relatively early in the book still. There's lots of story to go. But it's kind of complicated. If you're a vampire and you don't know how to be a good vampire, you'll end up mutating and sick and losing body parts and dying. And there's drugs that people take. If you feed on somebody that's taking drugs, it'll mess you up permanently. And you're talking about into mutants that have to be tended to, and they live in the basement. And so there's characters that actually have these mutant vampires locked up underground, and they feed them the leftovers and things like that. But Live Girls is essentially a front, one of the fronts for the vampires to be able to feed on healthy people without being found out and without getting diseases and such as that kind of stuff. And then Casey is Davy's good friend. They had dated. They didn't date. They were boyfriend and girl. They were friends and co-workers, and they had a tryst. And they like each other very much. Casey seems to want Davy bad, but he doesn't seem to want to go that direction. Anyway, she's a tough girl, and she would be probably 1B as far as main characters go. Casey's tough, and she's trying to protect Davy, and she ends up getting roped into this whole deal in it as well. And things get rough, and they get tough, and they get raw and brutal. But the book is great from start to finish. It ends well. Ray Garton is a great writer. The story is raw, and it's graphic, and there's sexual stuff, and it's graphic as well. but it's not really titillating, I guess you'd say. It's more brutal. More brutal, more raw. Think about vampires biting people and doing things to people and such as that, how that could be. So it's not for the faint of heart. But I would also not say it's a brutal X-rated bloodbath or anything like that. It's more on the rough side, more on the raw side, but not too far. I don't like to go too far with my reading or my movies or anything like that. Sometimes that line gets a little blurry though. And there's another lady vampire who also likes to take in warrants, if you will, named Sheeta. And we find out more about her in the book. But I recommend this book, Live Girls. It's a horror novel. It's got good characters. It's got that rugged, raw 80s feel that I like. Not modern day stuff written for nostalgia in the 80s or set in the 80s for nostalgia. This is something that was written in the 80s, and it is vintage 80s horror. It feels just right. Just like what I remembered growing up in the 80s. Not in New York City, but that's it. This is the book I've read by Ray Garton, and I'm going to read more by Ray Garton. I've got some more sitting on the shelf, some more books I got to get to. There's a sequel to this one called Nightlife, but I also have a vampire novel called Ravenous, which I'm also told is a slightly different take on werewolf novel. A different take on the werewolf genre. And I've read some things about it too. But I think Ravenous will be my next Ray Garton read. And I'm looking forward to that because Live Girls, for me, as a gateway book, is a success. I need more from the author. So I think, I'm going to read some more for Ray Garton. I'm going Ravenous and Werewolves. I've always been a werewolf kind of fan. So hopefully I'll enjoy that one as much as I enjoyed this one. And I'll also want to read the sequel that I already forgot the name for, Nightlife. I want to read that one as well. But Live Girls, I'm giving it a sturdy 4 out of 5 stars or 8 out of 10. I feel like it deserves a little bit better because I liked it a lot. But for me, that's kind of the right place to set it. 4 out of 5 Live Girls. I would recommend it to those who are not squeamish, to those who like horror, to those who dig vampires or even tolerate vampires, and especially for those who like reading 80s horror written and set in the 80s. New York City, Times Square, it's all interesting to me. I really dug it. And so I recommend it with those sorts of caveats. I wouldn't recommend it to my 12-year-old son or to my wife even. She's not really into that kind of stuff. But if you're in that kind of stuff, give Ray Garton's Live Girls a shot. I really enjoyed it, and I'm coming back for more. But with that being said, I can think of no more lies to tell, so thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it, and say la vie, baby. Doo-doo.